Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Alpine Odyssey. Today we are building the main, sightseeing object, the main weenie, you could say, on top of the small hill right along the coaster. Now we built this coaster on stream this past Sunday. This is technically the third iteration, and with your guys' help and feedback, and of course a little bit of trolling on my end, we managed to get our way and squared away into something that is at least functional. There's problems with it that I want to try and iron out over the next episode or two, but for now we are just kind of worrying about some scenery, and this is of course kind of the largest and most detailed section of the coaster scenery that we're going to be doing now. And I spent a lot of time kind of measuring it, trying to come up how many sides I need the structure to be, and we are making simply a windmill, something very common in the Netherlands or say Denmark, and you would be surprised on how complicated and detailed these things can be. There's a lot of little nooks and crannies to get involved on this thing, so it's just kind of interesting, the whole building process, and because it is essentially a big spire. We're gonna have 8 sides on this thing. I decided that it would be cool to build it like we have been the other spires. It's also probably the most time saving method to do something like this. So we are just going through, roughing out the scale that this thing needs to be in to begin with. I need to establish the lower complete wooden, support structure for the mill, and this is going to be, the main stationary section as well, and also a lot of the load-bearing section of this build. And we want to have some windows down here. We want to have I offset these wood panelings just to give it a little bit more of a rustic feel. We're going to have some pretty clean white lines in this area as well, and everything is basically a big a measuring kind of stick at this point. We want to make sure things are going to be fitting along the coaster. I couldn't really build it at the coaster itself, at least this lower section, because one, I didn't know quite how tall it was going to be yet. Two, I didn't quite it's hard to see with the wood of the coaster kind of all around that thing, and I didn't want that to distract me from constructing a fairly detailed building here. And for its size, it's definitely not as big, in my opinion, as a real windmill would be. I think a proper windmill is probably about a quarter in overall size larger than we have here. But I think for the theming and for Planet Coaster itself, it is a pretty close representation of what you might see, and it does read off some nice details from afar as well. So we are going to be boarding up this upper balcony area. This is a walkway of sorts. Now, windmills, they do spin. It's how, of course, they mainly control the speed. So usually the whole upper half, or maybe just the top, will rotate. And the way they rotate the object is that there's this whole mechanism outside, and this catwalk kind of surrounding the whole building is how the people operating the windmill will generally get to it. There's also a space you can see in the catwalk up there, and that is to separate the stationary section from the moving section, and keep that from interfering with each other, and you need that gap to facilitate a spinning mechanism on this foundational base. Now, very similar to what we've been doing before so far in Planet Coaster, especially for anything that is a rounded shape, like what we did around the carousel. We are building essentially one tile set, and this whole tile set will be copied around 8 times to give us our proper and final shape. So, we are getting the wooden base of the windmill completed, and then we are completing this kind of upper walkway, giving this a nice white railing. The colors that we're using, of course, are going to be probably just a natural rustic wood color. white painted wood colors, red painted wood colors, and I believe we also get into some dark greens and things, just to, add that final little touch and a little bit of a more neutral dark color other than brown. And things can get a little repetitive when you are building these things. And also a lot of this is just measuring. We want to copy a section, rotate it around, quickly rotate that all the way around so we can get a measurement from the left to the right side, because I don't want this thing to bleed over, and I don't want the seams of the structure to break. And so the easiest way to do that is to essentially copy your whole structure, make it into the circle, essentially use another building that you're going to delete right here as a reference point on how wide each little slice of this pie is that we are making. We can also then rough in shapes. So, I'm roughing in kind of how tall I want this thing to be in proportion to the lower section. And here you can see that, this is about the final measurement that we've come to. We want to have it flare out at the bottom, and so that's what this spine is kind of representing here. And then at this point, when you copy it around, you can kind of see what was missing from your previous blueprint a little bit. But two, you see that we are starting on the left side here, laying out this thatch, because I want the upper windmill section to be all thatch, kind of roofing covering on it. We haven't used much thatch in our build at all yet, and two, it's kind of a lightweight material for such a large structure. That's, in my opinion, probably why they used the material. If they made it 100% out of wood, I don't know if a windmill could be able to support all that weight to it. But I'm using the left measuring stick, which is technically part of the building I'm working on, and going over to that right kind of new measuring stick, you could say. And that is the guideline. Even though it's not part of this building itself, it doesn't matter, because once I delete that and move things around and recopy it over, it will function exactly like the left side would. And so this is how I go around making my mirrored buildings like this. And now we have all the thatch laid out. So at this point, we're gonna try see what it looks like on top of the mountain. It basically looks like a big hat sitting up there, or something a little bit more phallic, depending on where your mind goes first. We want to then separate this lower thatch section and get some heavier, bulky wood bits, get some juts overhanging these areas as well. And this is kind of the visual, you could say almost ball bearing of the windmill. On this windmill, at least in my reference image, I forget exactly, I think Amen is the windmill. I could be wrong, it could just be the way the picture's titled, but that was my main reference source for this windmill. I believe it just has a upper section that sits on top of this rotating wooden ball bearing type of thing, and that's what actually moves the windmill around. And we'll get to that a little bit later. We end up not fully covering the full build process. It was quite a long one, a lot of trial and error, and a lot of measuring 100 times and cutting once kind of deal. But at this point, we're just going to go ahead, size out the blades for the windmill, make sure they are long enough and proportional to the structure itself. Now, you don't want to have it all the way down to the wooden platform below. You don't want to decapitate your workers down there. And so you want to have enough buffer room just to make that a safe space. You also, this isn't a functioning windmill blade, which is kind of a shame. I did toy with the animatronic kind of windmill blade they have base in the game, but it is, I think, half or 75% as big as the one we're making right now. And as cool as it would have been to have a spinning windmill blade, it also would have looked really janky to have such a small blade on such a tall tower. So the blades are a little bit more detailed as well. So, we want to get each rung in here, all these vertical beams. And all this is done with, the 2 meter, 1 meter kind of wood beams as well. And you know, you occasionally throw in these odd horizontals. Maybe it's been damaged over the years, so they kind of reinforce sections of it. We're using this brick, one as a change of texture and two as a change of color. We are supporting the back ends of these blades with a little bit of a wooden, not a hinge, but just a connector piece. And we're going to try and thin out the blade. This is technically the blade that is going to be cutting through the air, and that is going to cause the windmill to actually function. We are adding red toppers to the wooden kind of, I guess this is the fan blade, you could say. I don't know much of the technical terms of the windmill. I'm sorry. Go ask a Dutch person. I'm sure plenty of you guys who watch my videos are Dutch too. So ask them. I don't know. I'm American. We don't have windmills. It's not our thing. We have like little tiny western-y ones, and they're not as cool. Too many sideways kind of beams going on there. It looked a little busy, so I took some of those away just so it looks a little bit more spotty and can read from a distance. Because from a distance, one, that is the most common viewpoint that these guys are going to be having. Also, from afar, it just looked like a wall of white, and so this way you can kind of see through the blades from afar, and that's definitely what you wanted to try and accomplish with these blades themselves. The upper section, we're going to use a little bit of a window as a I guess a makeshift hole in the wall, you could say, for the main wooden beam coming out supporting the fan blades there. Gonna move the fan just a little bit closer into the structure, just so it's a little bit more streamlined looking. We're going to then create almost like a turret from a tank, to be honest. That's kind of the mindset I was in when making this thing. And it's just going to be continuing with the thatch, and it is very rough. You know, at this stage it doesn't look very good. In fact, we will be cutting out a lot of me fiddling with this here in a couple minutes, and then we'll be going to the real time. However, it is 100% worth taking your time, and even though it might look weird as it does in this stage, when you start adding like timber frames to it and start slowly covering up the odd seams that you are creating by using this kind of odd tile roof piece, it's gonna look pretty good, I think, at the end. We're adding this kind of heavier back window at the top there. That was just there in my reference picture. I don't know what it's used for. Maybe just if they're up there doing maintenance on like the gears, they could open the window up for ventilation. I have no idea why they would have a window at the very top. It also, I guess it looks cool, so that's always a factor. The rule of cool always applies to pretty much every structure humanity makes, and if it doesn't look cool, you know, sometimes it's just not worth building. So we're reinforcing these seams, these corners, trying to bulk up this thatch, and you can see it really smooths out the surface just to make that blend a little bit better. And also, this is going to separate it from the lower section, where it's very much just swaths of these thatched sections. This upper section is going to be a little bit more reminiscent of a timber-framed home. Just instead of plaster, we're using thatched walls, essentially, and it's just one big giant roof. That's what it is. It acts like, and it is pretty cool to work on such a structure as well. Copy and paste, rotate that around. Both sides are mirrored, however they are slightly different and just barely slightly off center from each other. It did create a little bit of a problem down the line when adding kind of the upper part of the next roof section. But this is pretty much all the stuff that I was able to record on my own. We are now going to slowly transition into the real-time section. You guys will give me your feedback. Just another heads up, I'm not going to be riding the coaster in this episode. I'm not going to be riding it again until all the scenery is in place, just so that we get a nice final clean ride in Alpine Odyssey. So let's go over to real time and see what it looks like. So here we are, taking a look at this wonderful wooden coaster that we have made last stream, and it's zipping along. It follows the terrain quite nicely. There's areas that I'm going to have to tweak and work on, as I said, and your guys' feedback or it's ever important for me to build a coaster. I'm absolutely terrible at it, and if you were there for the live stream, you would get to see a very frustrated Uthris try his best to make this thing, but you know, with your guys' help, I think it turned out pretty nice. It's actually my first, I'll go ahead and just show you the stats, my first all-green coaster I've ever made. So that's a good start, I think, and hopefully that can continue into some other things. But that's enough about the wooden coaster for now. You guys will get to see that more and more. You can see the top of the lift hill goes through the middle of it. But this is currently the windmill, and it has the upper section done, and everything is looking pretty cool. I like the proportion from the lower base to the upper roof section that's covered in thatch. The blades are a decent size. They could be maybe 20% longer. I might do that depending on your guys' feedback as well. In the back here, we have a little bit of a doorway so people can get out of the lower section and out onto this walkway, which actually has the main control for turning and angling the blades on the front side. It's an interesting mechanism. I saw a video of a guy basically having to stand on it and kind of go hand over fist to get this thing to turn. It's a very heavy, all wooden mechanism. You can see how it connects up to these pivot points, and I'm pretty sure I might end up running some ropes here as well, just because I think if they have them, and it essentially torques, I believe torques, this upper section, and this rotates around another bearing kind of around here, and this whole thing will just spin around itself so that people can control the speed, which looks great. We have a couple little windows along the side just for decor. We get our support beams shooting out from about the second floor to support the upper kind of walkway area. We have, of course, the red and the white decking sections going across there, and we even tied that into the wheel, the door, things of that nature, and it's looking pretty good. I don't quite know exactly quite yet how I want the coaster to interact with it. I know I currently have the coaster going through the middle of it, which looks fine, in my opinion. It can do that. It can also go off to the side. It can go in front of it. We could even have another building, but essentially I wanted this to be some sort of grain chute coming off this thing, and then the station itself, which is our next big project that we need to work on, is going to be a shipping kind of grain silo-esque type of thing, and I think that would be kind of a cool aesthetic. Just have this very countryside feel that will eventually bleed into another section of the park. Yeah, let me know what you guys think of those plans. So until then, I think this is pretty much all we have to talk about on today's build. If you guys are enjoying Planet Coaster, feel free to leave a like down below. Go ahead and also leave a comment on how you think everything's turning out so far. We're almost to episode 20 of the series, and if I had to guess, we have another 120 to go. So until then, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.